Hello and welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. As always, I am your co-saint, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about The Magicians Season 1 and Magicians Book 1.
So obviously there will be spoilers for both the book and the first season of the television show that is on Sci-Fi. We both went through the book. Well, to be honest, it was the audiobook because we don't really have time for reading.
Who reads
with a
nowadays?
toddler. So, yeah, we went through the book. I went through the book a few months ago. We just finished the television show about 2 weeks ago. And we have not yet watched season 2. So, that there are no spoilers for season 2 yet because, we haven't gotten into that.
Yeah, we don't even know it ourselves to spoil it for you.
Yeah. We have read book 2. Kathy is most of the way through book 2. And
halfway.
I've read through book 2. And so there may be spoilers for that book, but maybe not.
No.
So.
Well, in a way, the TV series is already kind of spoiling the books for you if you haven't already read the books.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Our summary and review. I would say that this is going to be a hard summary for me. My summary is Lev Grossman took some of the best parts of C.S. Lewis's and J.R. Tolkien. Well, yeah, Tolkien as well. And J.K. Rowling's work and combined them into a meta-narrative about millennials. That's my summary.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more detail to your blanket summary. Your reviews remind me of just the one sentence book reviews that give you no detail.
Well, yeah.
But it's supposed to be a summary, not just a one sentence review. So, okay, for the TV series, I'm going to stick with that. This is we're following Quentin, who has found out that magic is real and that he actually has the ability to do magic. He goes to school to learn some stuff. He meets a bad guy who does really bad things. They go to a magical land, and they are still trying to defeat the bad guy at the end of season 1. At the end of book 1, they defeat the bad guy. Yes. Right? That's a little bit more of a summary.
Okay. With my review, I actually enjoyed the television show a bit better than the book. The reason being is that I felt like the television series did a good job of making the characters a lot more real rather than two-dimensional. I felt Lev Grossman's book was a little bit lacking in the character development front. Mm-hmm. I think Quentin just did not have any self-discovery throughout the entire book. I don't think it's until book 3 that he gets any real self-discovery, any real growth as a character. And as the main protagonist, I really didn't like him. Mm-hmm. And as I said this in a previous podcast, I didn't like him because of this, because he seemed very two-dimensional. He seemed very whiny and very disaffected with everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to talk about that more, but I think that for Quentin, it didn't, he went through all of these things. He went through some pretty traumatic events. His friends went through some very traumatic events, and nothing. It was all about him still. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That he didn't reach outside of himself, and I'll talk about that here more in just a second. But I felt like in the TV show, he did actually have some sort of, I'm kind of a dick. Mm-hmm. So I should stop being a dick.
Yeah. I too liked the TV series more than the book. For once, I know, very bizarre. But I agree with you. I feel like that we were able to learn about the other characters more. We found out a little bit more about Alice than we had in the book, in book 1. We found out a little bit more about Julia in season 1, whereas we find out more about Julia in book 2.
Yes.
But I kind of liked it because you kind of got to see a little bit more of the relationship between all of the students plus Julia.
Yeah.
Because Julia's not a student.
It added more life to the world that Lev Grossman created.
Yeah, it just added to it, but added to it nicely because it still was in the realm of possibility for, like, it's not like out there, you know what I mean? Because there's sometimes when certain prequels that are made into movies, The Hobbit, where there's just certain things that are added that
physics don't apply to elves.
No, I'm more about the elf dwarf relationship. That would not happen. It was not needed. It ruined the whole thing for me.
Okay, moving on.
Sorry, that's an example of like something that was added to an already good laid out universe that didn't need to be there. So anyway, this did not happen in The Magicians. I felt like every added thing was there on purpose, and it fit within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it made everything seem a little bit more real.
Yeah,
and I think that in essence really added to Lev Grossman's work as a whole. I mean, I would still give both the television show and the book blessings, with the caveat that they need each other.
Yeah, they complement each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the TV show is like I want to say like the grown-up version, but that's not a really good way to say it. Like the more enhanced version.
The enhanced version.
Yes.
Come back and watch this after you've read the book, because then you'll appreciate it more.
I think so. Well, I still appreciated it, even though I read the book afterwards, but... No.
It's not one of those things where you watch the movie and you're like, ugh. The movie is just horrible compared to the book.
Yeah, it's definitely not one of those things.
I think they both kind of added more to each other. Mm-hmm. It was a very more symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I did like the book on its own before actually watching the television series. And the reason being, I think that the underlying theme of Lev Grossman's work is having a lot to do with millennials, having a lot to do with the disaffected millennials, with how we kind of have grown up in this generation where we kind of had the back end of the boomer Generation X non-digital era, where we kind of knew what it was like to have a landline, to fight the battle every day with the landline and the internet.
Yes.
Of whether you were going to sign on to AIM that night or AOL just so that you can talk to your girlfriend in Canada who really does exist.
Or the waiting in line with that person who decided, like, right when checks were starting to go out and everybody had debit cards.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I mean, this still happens to this day, but it's not nearly as frequent. That one old lady that just insists on writing her stupid check. And so checkout lines were a lot longer as well, too. But anyway, that's another thing that people kind of forgotten about.
Well, and I think this is the idea of it was that we were the first ones to have this digital world, that we were the first ones to kind of grow up in this, to kind of be able to see other worlds. And I think that what it is that we've discovered that there is more than just ourselves. Mm-hmm. Is that in comparison of ourselves and the rest of the world, that when you didn't have this invention of the internet, you didn't have this idea of a much larger world outside of yourself, that you had almost every possibility at hand. That when adults told you, oh yeah, you can be anything that you want to be, you actually believed it. Mm-hmm. Like us millennials, we grew up with that. We grew up believing that we could be everything that we wanted to be. And then we got the internet and all of a sudden it was kind of like, oh, we can't be everything that we want to be because there are 1,000,001 other people that are just like me. And I can't be better than any of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think this led to a lot of the imposter syndrome. Is that right? The imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
The imposter syndrome that we all kind of carry is that, we can't be as good as the other person. I think this is very evident in each and every single one of these characters.
Especially Elliot.
Well, not just especially Elliot. I think it's especially Quentin, because you're in Quentin's head the entire series.
Yeah.
Not as much in the TV show, which is great. I think that's why it made it a little bit better, is you're not inside Quentin's head the entire time.
Yeah.
But I think Quentin is kind of the quintessential millennial, but quintessential stereotypical millennial.
Yeah.
Is the way that the boomers and Generation X kind of see us. Not just us Zennials, but all millennials. And I am using the exact term, not Generation Z, including term of millennials. I'm talking about those of us who actually grew up before the turn of the century and were kind of the first ones to kind of be adults in the new millennium.
Yep, and actually having to use... I think the key moment between us is we were the ones that started to actually use computers and the internet for our schoolwork.
For work.
Yeah.
For everyday activities. I mean, the computer became so much more important during the 90s and the early aughts that it really kind of replaced a lot of things.
Oh, yeah. I remember growing up that there was still... Even when I graduated high school, there was still some kids in my class that didn't have like a home computer. And that was like really difficult for them to actually finish their schoolwork. And I'm not that old of a millennial. Like I'm like in the middle of like the millennial spectrum. And I still even fall in between that.
Well, and this is the thing. That's why I use the normal term of millennial is because I really like that term digital native for Generation Z. Is because they were born after the year 2000 when computers have by that time replaced the vast majority of everything.
Yeah.
That everything is digital now. There are no more analog things out there. Analog TVs are on their way out. You're now getting the HD TVs, the flat screens, everything else by the end of the first decade in the millennium.
Yeah.
So everything is now internet. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the beauty of Lev Grossman's work there is that he pulled from some of the narratives that were defining for the millennial generation. He pulled from C.S. Lewis for those of us who were evangelical because we were forbidden from reading anything other than C.S. Lewis or some of those other Christian writers, which they were just bad. But Frank Peretti, I didn't think was that bad. But, I grew up with his young adult novels. But I wasn't allowed to read the Harry Potter series because of witchcraft. I wasn't allowed to read, we did read Lord of the Rings because we did watch the movies and everything else, but it was still kind of not really in line with Lewis, because Lewis was more evangelical Christianity, even though Lewis is more progressive than a lot of evangelicals give him credit for. So, like, he pulls from those works as well as Harry Potter, and kind of gives that same tropes that those books go off of. That there's a secret world and the secret school, that magic exists. That it is for everyone, but not just everyone, but those who are the best at who they are and what they are.
Uh-huh.
And I think that pulling from that, I mean, that gives what we millennials have been looking for our entire lives. We've been looking for that chance to be everything that we've wanted to be in some way or another. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love the Chronicles of Narnia. That's why I love time travel novels or time travel fiction. That's why I love books that have other worlds in them, because this is my way of saying, oh, I can actually go and be whatever it is that I wanted to be in that world, because there isn't like 1,000,001 Miguels in that other world. Mm-hmm. There's a great book series. I'm just going to plug it right now because I really love it, and I think that there should be a television show made about it. But the Long Earth by Terry Pratchett and I don't know the other writer's name on it, but it's a great book. Go pick it up. Go or listen to it. And I think that's why I love that novel, is because there are an infinite number of Earths that everybody could go to eventually, and that we just started spreading out. We started spreading out from our prime Earth and started exploring these other planets and these other worlds. And I think that's what I would have loved. I would love to be able to explore other planets. I loved Star Trek for that reason, is because I felt like then I could go and do something that I am actually useful at. And I think you see this in every single character in The Magicians, is that they want to be something more than they can actually be.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is that us millennials, we think of these other worlds so much that I think that it kind of distracts us from our prime world, as it were. Yeah.
The prime world as in reality.
As in reality, yeah. Which kind of goes against what we do on our podcast. Our podcast is about going to other worlds and bringing something back.
Yeah, but we bring it back to reality.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something, I pulled a quote from book 2, because Poppy has some of the greatest lines in book 2. But I think because this was tied in with so one of the plot lines that they pulled into the first season of The Magicians. I know that Poppy comes in later seasons, and like, why does she keep getting work? But anyway, the actress that plays Poppy in the later seasons. Anyway, her quote is, "You are so obsessed with other worlds that you're convinced that this one is crap and everywhere else is great, but you've not bothered to figure out what's going on here." She talks about how, like, in that these are the real things here, and you've not realized what's real here. You've been so obsessed with what's going on elsewhere that you've not really kind of figured out what's going on and what's real here.
Yeah. The exact point when she says this is one of the characters realizes that Panzance? Panzance. Yeah, like, he's like, oh, as in the Pirates of? And they're like, yeah, it's a real place. And he was like, what? And that's why she brings up this quote, like, she's like, yeah, it's not a fictional place. Like, it's a real place. And yeah, so it's kind of like her way of saying sometimes what you think is fiction actually happens in real life.
And I think this is the way that it is with us millennials, and that's why I liked both the book and the television show. I think the television show did kind of tone this down a little bit in order to make it a television show, because they did age up all of the characters. They did
which kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
the content,
because they did also increase when it happened, because in the books it happens in, I think, 2009. And then in the television series, it's actually happening in 2016, I think, when it first came out. So,
yeah.
And, like, this is the prime for millennials. And, this is the prime for those of us who are going through this, is that oftentimes we don't like what's going on in the real world. And we have become disaffected. We've become disaffected with, our government. We've become disaffected with our churches. We've become, has it been like 3 seconds? There's been another, why aren't millennials going to church yet now, article that's been published by some Christian author out there, because they're thinking they're treading on new ground, but 25 million other authors have already written it and published it since the year 2003.
And they probably are all still missing the point.
Yeah, the prime point is that we're not connecting with that tradition anymore. We're not connecting with that tradition because we've been told our entire lives we could be whatever we want to be, and then we realize we can't. And this was the whole point of the book, was that, yeah, you can be a magician, but being a magician isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do magic, but what use is it?
Yeah. I mean, heck, they even say that in the TV series that a lot of magicians, like, just have normal, regular jobs. Like, they work in the stock exchange, and they're bankers and real estate agents and that kind of stuff. Like, they do have, like, some, like, quote, like, otherworldly positions as well. But a lot of them just are normal day-to-day people.
Quentin, at the end of the book, actually is like some business guy who doesn't really do anything. He just goes and plays on his computer.
He has an imaginary title, and he gets invited to meetings, but he doesn't really know what his job is, and nobody knows what his job is, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Everybody just kind of assumes he's a bigwig, and so they just kind of let him do what he does.
Anyway, that's why I loved the book. That's why I loved the television series, and I think it's something that I think that's the real issue that a lot of us millennials, adults who are younger than 40, face nowadays. Is trying to be whatever we want to be in a world that says, "Oh no, there's 1,000,001 other yous just like you. So what makes you so special?"
Yeah, and I think it's still a good thing to think that you are special in your own way, because I feel like if you stop thinking that way, like, you can really spiral down like real quick. Mm-hmm. So it's still okay to think you're unique, but you're not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. Is it wasn't Millennials' fault. Like, we were told how special we were. I mean, our parents were the ones that were giving us the participation trophies. I mean, we weren't the ones asking for them. It was the parents that were asking for them for us to show that we were special. So,
yeah. Well, we can always go back and say that boomers created a world that we can't succeed in. Yeah. That we can't be the everything that we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, this kind of...
Speaking of boomers and how they ruin the world.
No, I was going to do another transition, and it was going to be different.
Sorry.
No, you messed it up. Well, I was going to say... Speaking of things that aren't true, or speaking of things that aren't always right or accurate, problematic faves. Great transition. We're a good team. So I don't know if any of you have heard this phrase before. It's kind of been like thrown out there, especially recently. What problematic faves actually means is... what's a good example? Oh, like, for example, my problematic fave is Taylor Swift. Like, you can hate me on this if you want, but I like her music. I think it's either fun to sing to, fun to dance to, fun to listen to.
1985 or whatever the one album was, that was a great album, but this most recent one, not so much.
See, I still liked it. I know people can, harp on me all you want, but I do love her a little bit. Like, I love her style. I love just her songs in general and like her artistic style. However, she's gotten better about this, but she's not necessarily the best feminist out there. In fact, I don't know if she's like this anymore. I think she's changed her tune, but for a while there, she didn't want to be called a feminist. She didn't think she was a feminist because she, like many other women out there, thought that being a feminist meant making sure that women were better than men. When in reality, being a feminist just means that everybody is equal, period, no matter what their gender is. And that to me is kind of problematic. Like, the fact that she was shutting people down, like, didn't want to be called a feminist, giving the wrong kind of terminology, spreading it around. Who's the other? Oh, what's her name? Meghan Trainor.
Yeah.
Too. She's like this too, saying that she's not a feminist. When in reality, if it weren't for past feminists and feminist movements, they wouldn't be able to be where they're at now. Like, the fact that they can keep their own money and their father wouldn't be the one in charge because they're not, both of them aren't married. Mm-hmm. Their father would actually be in charge of their money. They wouldn't be in charge of their money. You know what changed that? A feminist movement. So really, like, that's what kind of bothers me about people who don't follow that line. But anyway.
But how does that make her a problematic fave?
She's a problematic fave because I still love her. Like, I still, like, put her on a pedestal. But she has some stuff wrong with her. She's not as great as I want her to be.
So the definition of problematic fave is that you favor somebody, but they're not the best person.
I favor them, but they definitely have flaws.
Okay.
and you can definitely kind of, a lot of people would say I should tone down my favoritism because of their flaws.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another good example about this is Judge Judy. In fact, Stuff Mom Never Told You, they do a series on problematic faves. They talk about like their favorite people and why they like them, but then also talk about some of the bad stuff. Judge Judy is another one of those that, like, you know, she's a businesswoman. She brought up her own, essentially, you know, worked up her own career in a field that was very dominated by men. But a little known fact about Judge Judy is that she doesn't think that women need to continue to build themselves up in the workplace. Like, she doesn't think that there's a problem with them not getting as much money as men,
Okay.
which is definitely a problem. See what I mean? Like, that's another example of a problematic fave.
Okay.
And then for the book example, kind of tying it back into the book, is the relationship that Quentin has with the filler novels, and especially the author, oh my gosh.
Christopher Plover.
Plover. His last name, I always want to call him Plummer, but it's not Plummer, it's Plover. But he kind of is on equal playing field, I guess, with C.S. Lewis more like. Like, I would compare him more with C.S. Lewis in, like, real world terms, I guess. It would be almost as if we found out that C.S. Lewis was a pedophile.
Yeah.
You know, like, we have definitely thought of the series as being very instrumental in our lives and very important to literature as a whole. And it has definitely shaped the lives of people and, like, their personalities and how they go about, you know, being themselves in the real world. So when he finds out that Christopher Plover was a pedophile, they do a better job about this in the series than they did in the book. In the book, it was just kind of like a one-line, Jane? Yes.
Jane, yeah.
Jane says, well, you know, don't be hard on my brother because he was actually abused by Plover, and that's the reason why he found filler in the first place. And it's kind of like just one line, that's it. Quentin doesn't really think about it anymore. I don't know if he thinks about it in the series further at all, but he doesn't really think about it very much in book one. It's just kind of like a one-off thing. Whereas in the TV show, it's more of a dramatic reveal, like, oh my God, like, are you serious? Like, this guy that we idolized, this guy that brought this world to us, that was so instrumental to me, like, essentially took me out of the darkness when I was falling into some depression, was a pedophile?
Yeah.
Like, he definitely had to think about it more in the TV series than it was in the book. I don't think they did a very good job in the book. But anyway, my question is, when we find out something like that, like the way that Quentin found out, like, my examples of problematic faves they're essentially more shallow. I mean, Taylor Swift is not a criminal. You know what I mean? Whereas Plover is a criminal. Can we still appreciate their work when we find out something so dramatic like that? I want to kind of tie this into, like, the Me Too and the Time's Up movement. Like, the fact that we see so many celebrities that people really idolized. Like, for example, Louis C.K. I mean, I would admit, like, I thought he was a great guy. Like, I thought, you know, his comedy was a little crude, but, you know, I still thought it was funny. I think in the TV show, he showed himself as, like, a loving and a kind father, which I think also kind of made me like him a little bit more. And then when I found out what he had done in the past, that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. Like, do I still enjoy his comedy and appreciate his work? Or do I just write him off completely? Can I still enjoy the artist's work knowing the problem that the artist has?
Yeah, and it's, I think, the same thing that we have with a lot of other artists as well. As I don't know how to really speak to that.
I mean, like, I know how the industry has handled it. Like, for example, Kevin Spacey, when his thing came out, like, they just, like, took him out of the TV series, like, immediately. They were like, nope, we're not going to handle him. But then there's other bigwigs in the industry, like Woody Allen, who definitely has had his own scandals in the past.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's still in the movie industry. You know, what's the difference between the two? And can we still, I don't know.
This is something I was thinking about the other day with, I think there was this meme going around of, can you place this living room? And they were all from like sitcoms and like major dramas and stuff like this. But one of them I was thinking, oh, that's the Cosby's residence from the Cosby Show. And I was like, oh, how do we deal with that? Because Bill Cosby is a horrible person.
Yep.
But like we grew up watching that television show.
He is like the prime example. Like he's a great example because, gosh, I wish I wrote his name down, but thank you for bringing him up because he is a great example. Because even my grandpa, like my surly old grandpa, like if you met him, he's the surliest person you've ever met in your life.
And he'll give you business advice.
Yeah, he'll definitely give you business advice. Definitely unwarranted without even knowing anything about you. But anyway, he wears Cosby sweaters. And like that's you know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying Cosby sweaters. He wears Cosby sweaters. He has that kind of attitude, that kind of like dry humor. And he like idolized Bill Cosby. Even my white grandpa idolized Bill Cosby. And I know that he was a big role model in the African-American community, too. And so when the scandal came out, like, it really hit them hard, too. Mm-hmm. Like, here was this guy. He was supposed to be, like, the example of a good family man. A guy who has a great career, loves his family. Like, his family is very well-rounded and centered. And here he comes with this massive scandal. And it just kept on getting worse and worse.
Well, great career except for that Leonard movie and Ghost Dad and...
Well, I'm talking about mostly like his like stand-up and
show,
yeah. Well, and I think there was another TV show about like little kids say the darndest thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty cute series too. But still, like his show still had good morals in it. I mean, people still learned a lot from his show.
It's almost like, well, if something came out about Tim Allen, and, you know, he had his problems in the past, but he did redeem himself before Home Improvement, which, you know, we all grew up with Home Improvement. We loved it, you know, and I haven't gone back to watch it to see how it holds up. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we all wanted to be the Taylors. Yeah. We wanted to be the Taylors growing up.
Or date the Taylors.
Yeah, exactly.
Me? What?
Or have Jonathan Taylor Thomas show up to your house.
Who, me?
And so, but then he has this other show now, which is very problematic.
Yeah.
And
very misogynistic.
Yeah. And so, and very in line with the alt-right movement and stuff like this, which it's not really in line with it, but it's still kind of skirting the edge of it.
Yeah. Well, the reason why a lot of the alt-right people and a lot of the, like, I guess hardcore conservatives really liked it is because it showed, like, you know, this is a man who is holding on to his conservative values, who, you know, is still trying to be the leader and, you know, the leader of his family and show, I don't know, leaderness. I don't know. I never really grew up with that kind of mindset, so I don't know how to phrase it. But you know what I'm talking about, where the man's supposed to be the head of his household. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I never watched the series that he's in right now because it just doesn't appeal to me.
Patriarchy.
Patriarchy. Makes me kind of sick, just kind of like watching the previews for it, so it wasn't really my cup of tea.
Well, I think this is something that I think is a much larger question that we need to ask, and it's not really... Well, not really per se with this work with the magicians. I mean, I guess it kind of is a little bit, but do we let people redeem themselves?
And in what circumstances do we let them redeem themselves?
Like, I know that Quentin wants to redeem himself with Alice, and this is something that happened in book 1. This is something that happened in season 1.
Oh, book 1 is so much worse. I'm just like, gosh, Quentin, she doesn't owe you anything. But anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do we let him does Alice let him redeem himself?
Mm-hmm.
Even though he really screwed up. Like, in the book, it's much worse because he just got drunk. In the television series, they had that emotion magic, and he was kind of blacked out a little bit and drunk, and so
yeah, it's definitely a different experience when you have like the intense emotions come into play.
Yeah.
Well, in that circumstance, I mean, that's definitely a real world, like, kind of a one-off thing. I think when it comes to, like, the Me Too movement with Louis C.K., with Kevin Spacey, with other members of that movement like that on the wrong side, and also with Plover, in his example,
yeah,
those are criminal offenses. You know,
yeah.
What Quentin did it was a jackass movement, but it wasn't criminal.
No, I know. But I'm saying is that do we allow them once they've gone through served their time or whatever, do we allow them to redeem themselves, or can we still enjoy their work if, you know,
or can we still enjoy their past
truly
work?
Well, we can't even really see if anybody's ever truly repentant of what they did. Like, I think this is in line with what's going on as well with James Gunn with the Guardians of the Galaxy thing. Yeah, he tweeted out some pretty horrid stuff, and you know he admitted to it, and you know he seems to be repentant about it, but like we can never really truly see if he is or not. Does that mean we completely like not like his work? Mm-hmm. Even though Guardians and Guardians 2 were kind of some of the best fun movies of the entire MCU.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, and if we'd like talk about Woody Allen again, I mean, his movies are iconic.
Yeah. Like,
iconic. But he also is kind of a creep.
Yeah.
So, like, that's another good example. Like, I know people who still like to watch his movies because they really love his movies. But then they also feel guilty about the fact that they like his movies because they purchased the movie, so he kind of benefits from that.
I feel like we came up with more questions rather than answers for this episode.
But it's hard. I mean, this is one of those things, like, it's kind of only time will tell. Like, me, as a person I am, I feel like everybody deserves forgiveness. But, like, what does that forgiveness entail? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I can still forgive, like, Aziz Ansari for, you know, what he did. Which is, I think what he did was a different scale as in terms of, like, what Louis C.K. did.
Yeah.
But I still kind of think he's funny.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, Tom Haverford was pretty much a misogynistic jerk.
Yeah, but he's playing a character. Yeah. You know, I'm never going to judge somebody's life based on the character that they played. You know? Yeah. If you're playing a villain, like, I'm not going to, you're a villain forever and ever.
No, I know. But I'm saying that, you know, it may not have been hard for him to.
Oh, yeah. To kind of go there. Yeah. I mean, it's, I know we didn't give you guys answers on this. I mean, I think this is just going to be one that maybe would be better to bring you guys into the discussion. Like, how far do you think it's okay to forgive somebody? At one point in time, can we start enjoying their art again? If at all. Yeah. Like, is there a point to where we just can't do it anymore? And we just kind of have to just try to get back, like, step back from it? Or can we eventually slowly bring them back into the works?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's hard.
So, the two questions that, the principles that we got from the parable of the magicians, book 1 and season 1, is, well, for millennials, is how do we interact with our world and being just ourselves and being average. And average is okay. But, how do we deal with that?
Well, and
without being disaffected?
And Poppy's point, how to actually enjoy the world that you're in.
Exactly.
Take advantage of it.
And for the other one is can we enjoy the work of those who are...
Problematic faves.
Yeah, problematic faves.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's what we talked about today. In closing, we are still working on some things. We did watch Extinction. Oh, goodness. Don't watch it.
Ew, gosh. Yeah.
It had a good twist, but it just wasn't worth the effort.
No.
Mr. Robot Season 3 is coming up. How It Ends, we did watch that. It was good. I do recommend watching that. We'll talk about that next week. 7 Seconds, we have not yet watched that. Ozark Season 2 has not come out yet. We did watch Deadpool 2, the movie. And so that will be coming up in 2 weeks. First Reformed, Hereditary, Solo, Won't You Be My Neighbor, Castle Rock. We've got a lot coming up, so stay tuned for all of that. If you have answers to our questions, or if you would like to talk about any of our previous episodes or something that we should be covering in our future episodes, find us on social media. We have a group. We have a Facebook page. We've got Twitter. You can also give us a call or a text at 720-372-3879. And with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.